Thank you again, Steven Spielberg, for being with us today and recording us. Thank you again to Carlene. This is number 8 today. And we're getting to that time in the journey of learning here that things are starting to overlap and sediment and tangle. And so it's going to put a little bit more burden on y'all to be taking notes and keep track of what's going on. We've talked about language, we've talked about elders, we've talked about racism, Black Lives Matter, we've talked about indigenous issues, we've talked about intersectionality, rural and northern issues in terms of social work with victims of abuse. We've talked about how there's definite patterns, so we never know. We're never the expert on any other person's life, and only on a good day even are we experts on our own lives, right? We're often a bit foggy, right, even there.
Not wrong.
So we can become experts on patterns, though, and we're going to become experts on patterns. So today what we're going to talk about is poverty and how poverty links up with social work with victims of abuse. So I'm going to invite you, as I always do, to use a lot of your imagination. We're all born with a potent imagination, and by 4th year social work your imagination should be really robust and pulsing and alive, because empathy and imagination go together, right? When I'm working with any other person, I have to use my imagination. What's it like to be that person? And I have to ask questions. Teach me to be you. Teach me about your life story, what your strengths and weaknesses are, what your assets and resources are, what your challenges are, where you've been hurt or disadvantaged, where you've been powerful and liberated, all that stuff. You give me information, but then I need to imagine and empathize and put it together in some kind of a meaningful way in interaction with you, the other person, or other persons. Right? So I'm going to put some buzzwords here, for those of you who are really good at taking notes. So we're going to talk about the life cycle, poverty, and social work with victims of abuse. And I want to talk about poverty not in just the usual flat way or lazy way of poverty is money. Poverty is also a poverty of hope. It's a poverty of knowledge. There's poverty of time. There's poverty of support and language. There's poverty of safety. You could imagine having a poverty of magic, joy, enchantment, and then poverty of self-esteem. And kind of picture that web of poverties, let's say, that intersecting, tangled up web. So I'm going to start by talking about this art piece. And so Steven Spielberg, I'll put this close enough to your camera that you can get a sort of overview, and I'll talk about it, and then maybe we'll come back and do another close-up. Yay. Okay. So this is an art piece I made quite a while ago. I might have made this, I don't know, 10 or 15 years ago. And what, I'm going to draw your attention to sort of little spots on this piece. And I grew up white bush trash. My father had all kinds of different jobs. He was minimally successful, let's say, in the work zone because of many factors. One, his challenges with reading and writing in English, his challenges as a person with limited impulse control, his challenges of being in a boom-bust mining community, a lot of challenges in his life. We'll just leave it at that for the moment. My mother at that time, as many women, worked sort of part-time in and out of the labor force. That generation of women, that was fairly common. And again, we grew up, we lived rural, isolated. So in terms of accessing employment, there were also challenges around that. Minimal opportunities to take the bus and so on. Everything was distant. Versus, you know, if you grew up in Vancouver, let's say, you can get a job, maybe a quick bus ride away, and you can also maybe access childcare. So my mother had challenges around those variables. So having said that background, to give you a feel for what was influencing me as I made this. So poverty is something I've experienced. And up here in this corner, I have a mother with her baby, and this is a piece of work from, I believe, Dorothy Tanner. I've kind of made collage things using bits from other people, and here she's I thought this was a really powerful image in terms of the mother looks very worn and griefy. You can also look at art pieces, photography from Dorothy Lang if you ever get a chance. Amazing. She does photos of the Dust Bowl Depression in America. Dorothy Lang, Google that one. Potent. So here we have mother and child looking very ragged and torn and worn down. Here we have, I've put in sharp objects. What I've used to communicate that is toothpicks. Poverty is like that. You're always getting kind of stabbed. Your maybe fifth-hand car breaks down and you have to get underneath it and try and solve it yourself, and it takes weeks or months to find the right parts, to find the knowledge, to find that help, to put it together.
And to get the funding.
To get the funding, right. So sometimes poverty is dangerously a jangle of things, in that maybe you've got a crappy job, but you need your crappy car to get to your crappy job. But when your crappy car breaks down and you can't get to your crappy job, you can't get the money to fix your crappy car, right? It's just a jangle. It's a shitstorm jangle. Poverty is like that. So that's why I have these stabby things here. And then I have these sort of black ropes and tangles here that it can just grab you, like put a leash around your neck or a rope around your wrist or pull you by your ankle. And poverty is also, it's a trickster, jokester, kind of makes a fool of you in the capitalist, patriarchal, mainstream world. Sometimes people internalize that shame and they feel, it's my fault I'm poor. If only I worked harder, or I planned better, or I strategized more cleverly, or I was more frugal, or I budgeted better. Bullshit. Bullshit. If you're making minimum wage and you're working in precarious jobs and you have maybe 3 part-time jobs on the go and you have no benefits and you're rural or on the edge of town, you are always going to have trouble. It's not about your budgeting skills. It's not about your planning. It's about a capitalist world that abandons as many as, let's say, half the population of your country. So the other part I have here is, this is a grenade with a lot of kind of yucky stuff on top of it. Poverty is this constant sort of ticking in the background. Will I have enough to pay my first and last month's rent when I have to move in 3 months from now because my job has asked me to move to this other area of town, or my roommate is moving out, or my landlord is selling the house so I have to move. So there's that constant what if, what if, what if, what now, what now. There's sickness, there's illness, there's getting laid off, there's seasonal employment, which is another thing for many poor people. Many women are vulnerable to, let's say, they're expected to work a 50-hour week during the Christmas season, and then January, February, they have no work at all. So, where do they get childcare for 50 hours a week for all of December?
But then nothing in January.
Nothing in January and February, exactly, right? And so it's also this snake that kind of bites you. Poverty can be like that too, that the way snakes can be felt is kind of creepy and they're silent, but then they could bite you. They just kind of dart out from somewhere. All of these kind of things have consequence and meaning for poverty. Here I have rotten teeth. I remember the constant pressure of the first 25 years of my life. I had no benefits. And the constant, I've got a toothache, what am I going to do? Where will I get the money? Either I pay my rent, or I fix my tooth, or I have the tooth pulled out. And since I've had benefits the last 25-ish years, part of me is like, yay, I got benefits, I can fix a tooth. But usually I have spent all those benefits by January, because it fixes one tooth. Right? Even fortunate people in our world now, if they have benefits, which my understanding is that's only about 25% of the Canadian population who have access to benefits, but even the benefits are often pretty shabby, in the sense of 1 tooth per year. What if you have 2? What if you have 3 that are gone? And I think what's happened is dentists have raised their prices, right, to $20,000 to put in a bridge, and two root canals, a bridge, at $20,000. Who has that kind of money, right? And definitely your benefits will not cover, or rarely cover anyway, a bridge, a crown. They may only cover the bare basics. So by the time you're 30 or 40, you may have lost teeth, you may look a certain way, and if you're a woman in this world, we still get judged on our appearance. If you want to get that job at Sears or the Bay as a clerk, which is for many poor women, you're judged on your prettiness. Let's be blunt about it. Let's be absolutely blunt about it. If you're missing teeth and you look haggard and you don't know or haven't had the money to take care of yourself so that you look like a professional, you're going to end up mopping floors at Tim Hortons. And so you can get stuck in that world of the service sector and precarious employment. The other thing I wanted to do here is in this corner, if you can get in closer, we'll get in close at the end of this. This is the human body, and I put a bullet wound here, and I put some stabby bits into the human body. In that, I believe, and a lot of research has shown, that the longer you live in poverty, and if you were raised as a child in poverty, it actually changes your body. It changes your health and well-being. We know that Indigenous women, for example, here in the North, are likely to live 7 years less life than a white woman. And that isn't based on the pigmentation of our skin. That's an indirect or direct consequence of a cluster of poverty dynamics. Right? It's not an intrinsic, oh, my skin is whiter, so I get to be healthier. It's because white women as a collective group are more likely to have more access to resources. So they're more likely to have had good nutrition when they were children. Their mothers may have had better nutrition while she was pregnant. The more dental care, better access to their inoculations, and better access to quick health care when you need it, because Indigenous people have a higher likelihood of living more rural and remote. Okay? When my husband was ill recently, we lived 2 blocks away from the hospital. So during our 5.5 years of constantly bringing him to the hospital, when he was no longer able to walk, we were able to take a cab for under $10. Right? But if we were on a reserve, it would have been impossible for him to quickly get to the doctor and for tests and so on. So just giving you that as a quick practical example. The actual body, when you are ill, again, I'm always talking about my husband, I guess, because I still miss him, and because it's a very practical kind of playing out of the day-to-day. While he was ill, I was able to make sure that every day he got his protein smoothies, and he got all his medications, and he got his food in a certain sequence. Many poor families, when they have poverty of time, poverty of support, poverty of knowledge, and access to resources, they may not be able to afford an $8 protein smoothie. They may not be able to afford a $3 bottle of Ensure, which is a high protein multivitamin kind of thing that helped him. All of this interplays every day of your life. How much access you have to material resources, money, access to time, hope, knowledge, support, safety, and magic and joy and enchantment. Sometimes as social workers you think, oh, all we do is do what promised. Well, if your clients have no access to joy, enchantment, and magic, they're more likely to turn to drugs and alcohol. They're more likely to give up on themselves. They're more likely to turn to violence. And self-esteem. although that's kind of an obvious one and it's everywhere and nowhere all at the same time, a person who grows up with poverty has limited self-esteem. They don't believe in themselves, they don't believe in their future, they don't believe in, oh, if I want to go to school for 4 years and get a university degree, I can do that, because they can't count on the world unfolding in a certain way with 4 years of predictable security. Middle class and upper class people expect a 4-year university. They expect that they'll succeed at university, and their parents and their network of people have prepared them for that. Right? There's a sequence of documentaries, if you have time and access to it. The first one I think is called 9 and Up, and then 14 and Up, 21 and Up, and the last one, which came out last year, was something like 49 and Up. It's a sequence of documentaries made in England. They chose, I think it was 10 kids when they were this little, and they asked them, have you seen it?
No,
Oh,
I haven't. I
it's
just really like.
It's amazing. It's amazing. They have these little kids, and some of them are poor family kids, and some of them are upper class family kids. And they ask them when they're this tall, what do you want to be when you grow up? And what's astonishing to me, being white bush trash, is a couple of them say, I'm going to be a lawyer like my father, like my grandfather. Of course, I'll be going to Harvard, I'll be going to Oxford. And it comes true. It comes true. Right? They were able to predict how their life would unfold. People like me, like I dropped out of school when I was 14, 15, right? Because I had to go get a job, I had to get away from violence, I had few opportunities. I was just kind of day-to-day living, right? If someone had asked me when I was 14, what will you be doing when you're 59? I'd have said, I'll probably be dead. I might die tomorrow. I wouldn't have been able to even imagine that far ahead in my life, because it's all day to day. It's crisis to crisis. Will I make it to Friday? Will my car be fixed by next week?
Or even tomorrow.
Or tomorrow. Or will my landlord have kicked me out by September? Or, right?
Yeah.
We don't have that luxury of security and confidence in the future. So you say to yourself, how does all this link to social work with victims of abuse, right? Well, I'll tell you. And in this image here, what I wanted to draw your attention to, this is another art piece I made a long time ago. And I'm going to get really close to the camera again, so you can get a sense of...
If you put it there, I can zoom it.
Is this good? Yeah? No, move it around
Yeah,
a
it's
little
good.
bit. So I'll draw your attention to up here, this little bit of sparkle. When I made this art piece, this is me with my sparkle, my little bit of sparkle. And these are predators. These are creepy snakes. And I don't know if you can see, they're different sizes and colors of snakes. And they're kind of, I was going for them to look kind of slimy. You might infer I don't like snakes. If there's people in the crowd who love snakes, I'm sorry to be besmirching their character. I know snakes are just being their snake selves, and I'm imposing my own fears. Snakes are great. Garter snakes.
Snakes are great, but if you see one move in front of her, she's gonna scream.
Yeah, it's not my thing. I don't cuddle with snakes. So I wanted to put out this kind of energy here. To the extent that you are poor of self-esteem, of magic, joy, enchantment, when you have no safety in your life, when you feel not supported, when you don't have time to yourself to think and reflect and grow and learn, when you don't have a lot of hope about your future and you have very minimal knowledge about what's going on in the world, predators will come at you. When sexual abusers or sexual harassers or the kind of guy called Igor who wants to have a girlfriend who's 15 and he's 35, he's looking for a girl who's vulnerable, who's shy, who doesn't really know what's possible for her full potential in the world, who'll take what she gets. The landlord, he might have 20 tenants or 50 tenants and he wants to sexually harass one of his tenants. Does he go for the one who has a great job, a great education, a great life? No. He goes for the single mom who might have 3 kids and who,
Girlfriends.
and yeah, and he'll call her his special tenant, and she'll say he's a special friend, and she gets to skip rent every now and then. Okay? This is the ordinary life if you're poor, that predators will come around and bother you, and you have to constantly be on alert. Here in the north, that has meaning. For example, if you live rural and isolated and you can't find a bus to get to where you go, you might have to go for, oh, Igor will give you a ride into town next week on Tuesday for your dentist appointment, but during the drive, he does sexual innuendos, he touches you, he does creepy things, and maybe the 3rd time or the 5th time he gives you a ride into town, he expects you to give him a blowjob. It's ugly. These words, by the way, I have to use the words clients might use with us. Clients do not say, and then Igor requested that I perform fellatio on him. He'll say, the clients will say, blowjob. So get yourself used to using some rough words. If you're working in a women's shelter or a youth shelter or with people in jail or people with addictions or people who've had tough lives, they don't say words like cunnilingus or then the alleged perpetrator digitally penetrated me anally.
He was a bad guy.
Yeah, they'll say, he put his finger up my ass, right? This is what clients will say. Get your mind used to, don't flinch when you hear these terms. Steven Spielberg flinched. So, this is the kind of thing that there's this idea of, let's say you're on mother's allowance. One of the lies or stereotypes out there is, if you're a single mom on mother's allowance, all you do is sit around all day and watch TV and drink beer. That is such a lie. Often they're on constant alert, trying to defend themselves and their kids from predators, and they're trying to figure out how to make resources work. They're maybe spending 5 times the amount of time cooking for their kids that a middle-class woman might just stop at McDonald's on the way home. They might be washing their clothes by hand in the sink because they don't have access to a washer and dryer. Poor people work hard to make their resources get them to the end of the month. They try and fix their own car. They maybe paint their own furniture that they got from Value Village, versus a middle-class woman goes online and orders from Wayfair and has a new credenza delivered.
Yeah.
Working through your day-to-day and making it all stretch is an effort. To keep your sparkle sparkling through your whole life cycle if you're a poor person is tough. Predators are always coming after you. So that's what this little art piece was about. And this 3rd art piece I wanted to talk to you about today, this is the shittiness that often is the life of poor people. And there's always somebody coming at them with a hammer trying to kind of punch them down. What I have here are eyes watching them. Poor people often get monitored, watched, judged by everyone. So, for example, they have maybe more social workers in their lives, they have more police in their lives, they have more landlords checking up on them, randomly doing assessments about damage in the unit. They may have neighbors who report them more often for this or that. Don't be that kind of social worker. I will haunt you. I will come after you in your dreams. I will be in your nightmares. Don't be this kind of judgmental social worker. Try and believe in your clients. Have hope in your clients. When they tell you their truth, don't be all judgmental and prissy. They're doing the best that they can day to day. If your clients tell you that maybe they're doing a little bit of drug dealing on the side, or they're doing sex trade work on the side, or they shoplifted to get something for their kids, don't be all judgmental and nasty. Try and problem solve with them to make their lives better. if you get all prissy and judgmental, they won't tell you their truth anymore. They will lie to you and they will not come back. So let's say if we go to our documentary of Precious, if we remember our Precious, there's a scene in Precious where she asks her mother for money for food. Her mother, implicitly, we aren't shown the scene, but we're given the impression that her mother asks her to do oral sex on her, and then her mother will give her food for money for lunch. We see a scene where Precious goes to a little restaurant kind of place and eats some French fries or something like that, and then runs without paying. If you find out, if Precious is your client and you give her a little scolding speech about don't steal French fries, you're basically being a judgmental, harsh bitch. Don't do that as a social worker. Precious, if we have empathy and imagination for her life, what it's like to be Precious, she's doing the best she can do. She's got to eat. She's hungry.
And she probably doesn't need the extra judgment that she's...
She doesn't.
Yeah, you're just making her more of a victim, because she's already probably really ashamed.
Exactly. She's flooded with shame every day when she looks in the mirror. We don't have to do that to her. She already knows it's wrong to steal food. Yeah. She knows that. That's not a brand new like, oh my God, I didn't even know. She knows, right? But in her world, where she has a limit of resources, self-esteem, access to everything good, she's in a situation. She's in a situation. Mm-hmm. So we want to help our clients who are social. She's a victim. In this case, she's a victim of racism, classism, violence, familial abuse. I would say criminal neglect by the school system. There's so many ways she has been a victim of abuse.
And disadvantage.
And disadvantage. Just layers and layers and sediments of it. So just keep all that stuff out of the room when you're trying to work with someone like Precious. Be kind to her. Be respectful. Be empathetic. Try and imagine what it's like to be her. And try, and one thing at a time, as she puts forward to you, problem solve with her. Help her access all the resources that are possible within the landscape the two of you are contained within. Okay? So I wanted to say all that, and now I want to invite you to put in your imagination the Queen of England, who will never be your client, Queen of England, and Precious. So let's just take, if we were in a classroom, as I've been for the last 23 years, I would draw on the board two lines. Before Precious was even conceived, and before the Queen of England was even conceived. The Queen of England probably has a mom and dad who have good nutrition, who are making, the plan to have a baby, who are excited. They're decorating the future Queen of England's bedroom with nice little paintings and stuffies and mobiles and lovely little blankies and everything. Precious, we can imagine, her mom wasn't even really keen to get pregnant. We can imagine Precious's mom has probably been living on French fries and cigarettes, right? So even when the Queen of England was conceived and Precious was conceived, right even there at the time where they're a little zygote that the human eye can't even see, the Queen of England already has more going for her than Precious. She's going to have adequate B6, B12, folic acid, iron, nutrition, everything. Queen of England gets born. The day she's born, she's going to have a doctor in the room. She's going to have everything nice. She will have brilliant medical care. We know that when Precious had her first baby, if you've had time to watch the documentary, Precious has her first baby as a result of her rape from her dad. She has the baby on the floor in the kitchen, and her mother is kicking her. This is why the baby, Precious's first baby, mongoloid, is, we infer, of limited intellectual capacity or has a learning disability or something. We infer. We're not really privy to it. We infer. That's part of why Precious's mom calls the baby mongoloid, because there's some kind of struggle there for the baby. So again, compare the story of Precious's mom, Precious, the baby, compared to the Queen of England
And her mother.
and her mother and her
this child,
babies.
yeah.
Right? So right away, from the day they're born, is a whole different story unfolding. Then think of by the time Precious is age 5 and the Queen of England is age 5. The Queen of England by age 5 has had tutors, has had nannies, excellent nutrition, excellent health care. If she has psoriasis or a hearing disability, it's been diagnosed and responded to with the best care. Precious, on the other hand, or her child Mongo, or her newest baby, we don't even know if they've had, by age 5, before they enter the public school system, if there was any deficits or any challenges. Queen of England has had it dealt with, Precious not so much.
Have they had access to shots? Or immunization, sorry. Not
Yeah,
euthanization.
all their immunizations, all of their skin care, toys to play with. We know, for example, again, research has shown that if you have 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 adults reading to you and constantly playing with you in good, wholesome ways between birth and age 5, it positions you to have, more self-esteem, more of a sense of empowerment, more of a sense of efficacy. It prepares you better to enter the public school system. You probably are able to read and write at least at age-appropriate level.
Yeah, you're able to articulate yourself to others.
Right, ask for things that you need, and your bones are at maximum potential and all that if you've had good nutrition. Someone like Precious, we see Precious in this documentary when she's about 14, it starts, but maybe she's had a learning disability. We don't even know, right? We later find out she can't read and write, and we can declare somebody along the way has obviously neglected her in the school system. She hasn't had tutors. We see it's the most shabby kind of school possible that she's going to. Someone like Precious versus the Queen of England, Precious in general, okay, someone like Precious is positioned that some guy will say, oh sweetheart, come and live with me and I'll take care of you. Many times in our offices as social workers, you'll meet someone like Precious who maybe has 3 children from 3 different men, or who has had 10 relationships in her life, and maybe 9 of them were physically and or emotionally abusive. We meet our clients often where all those levels of poverty have had consequence. The Queen of England doesn't have to take up with some guy to feed herself or her kids, right?
Yeah.
She's fine.
Yeah.
She's fine.
But she gets the dignity to say no.
She has the dignity and the empowerment and the status to say no to anybody, anything, right? But the type of clients you're going to have
Are probably at their lowest point and are doing things just to make ends meet.
yeah, they're at their lowest point. They've had multiple levels of crises in their life, and they may have these guys who are clients, like I've said, with those snakes coming at the sparkle. Oh, you're a 16-year-old girl with 2 children. Oh, I'll take care of you. Or, oh, if you come with me for the weekend, I'll buy you nice things. But then he dumps her on Monday, and she feels, well, I was starting to have affection for him, and he abandoned me. I thought he was going to take care of me and my kids, right? So the gendered and sexist and racist, all those intersections we've talked about, get amplified by material poverty. And it positions our clients to once again be harmed and be harmed and be harmed. And it then positions their kids to be harmed and to be harmed and to be harmed. So when we think of, for example, the Catholic Church, we'll take this story now to the Catholic Church. and I could pick any other large organization. In general, we know that something like 1,000 priests have been confirmed to have been sexually abusing kids. Across the world, not Prince George, but like the world, right? There are these predators. If you follow the stories, they will choose the kids who have the lowest self-esteem. They'll choose the kids who don't have parents who come in and defend them and protect them and believe them. These predators, if you listen to their life stories, and I have some videos where predators are talking, who are in jail or in an institution, talking about how things unfolded for them. They'll tell you they picked that kid because that was the kid that no one would believe.
Or the one with no one to tell.
No one to tell. Or sometimes even they pick a kid who they know the mother or father will be almost okay with it. Like, let's say mom's an alcoholic and a sex trade worker.
I can't afford to keep him and is always struggling with rent.
Exactly. So the priest, the landlord, the boss, the cop, the neighbor, whoever the predators are, they choose the most vulnerable and stigmatized kids. We haven't had enough coffee here today. Stigmatized kids. So I wish you as social workers who are doing work with victims of abuse, don't be putting more shame on them. Don't be putting more judgment on them. Explore with them and help raise their consciousness. It's not about them in the sense that they were born bad. They were born poor. Reflect on that with them and raise their consciousness and give them permission to forgive themselves and understand how and why the predators are coming at them. If this was a class, again, I would show this video. It's an amazing video if you can get your hands on it. It's from PBS. And in this video, it shows 3 families struggling with poverty. And we see the stories of these 3 girls unfolding. But we also see their brothers and the parents. So basically in this story, I'm going to try and summarize it for you. One of the families, it's a mom and dad living we see in the beginning, a really dumpy house, very shabby. And they're having troubles because the water freezes and I think the washing machine breaks down and all these things. The parents are trying really hard to be beautiful, good parents, but they're dirt poor. And the dad had been getting work in, if I remember correctly, carpentry. But because the whole town has gone into recession, he can't get work right now. He can just get a little job here, a little job there. So they're living on basically nothing. In addition to that, the mother has health issues. I think she has epilepsy, if I'm remembering. So the 2 kids have this feeling of fear and precarity, and we see them cutting out coupons to buy a pizza, the cheapest pizza, and then that's kind of their big meal for the day. We see the kids feeling afraid and sad about their future. There's a second family, it's a black family, and I believe in that there's 2 boys and a girl, and I actually worry more about the little boy in that family. They end up living in a shelter. The father has lost his job and they're living in a shelter, so they've had to let go of everything. And the one boy that we keep seeing in the camera, they used to have 3 TVs and now they only have 1, and it's only a small TV, and his parents had said to him, you can only take what you can carry to the shelter because we have to get rid of everything else. And he's very materialistic. You can see he gets, later in this video, he gets quite excited about a pair of running shoes. He wants a very particular, maybe Nike kind of running shoes. And his mother is saying, no, you're not going to get that. You'll only get these cheap ones from Walmart. And he can't accept this. He's very, very upset. He's maybe 13, I'll guess, from my memory. And you can imagine this young boy very soon turning to shoplifting, because he wants these shoes so bad. He feels ashamed to live in a shelter. He feels very stigmatized. He feels, you can see he feels kind of angry and impatient, like just below the surface. He wants what he wants, and he wants it bad. and these running shoes. You could see him, you could just picture him a month from now or a year from now ending up shoplifting something or many things, or turning to dealing drugs, or turning to some kind of crime to get what he needs. So we've now seen two families where the parents are good parents trying to do the best for their kids, but circumstances, being laid off, unemployment, no access to resources, not another thing that happens in these kids' lives, because the parents are constantly moving and there's so much chaos going on, the kids are missing a lot of school. You could imagine the kids getting more behind, more behind, more behind. The third family I'm going to talk to you about is a single mom. She has 2 kids. And we see them at first living in kind of a rural environment. We are never told where the dad went, or dads, or anybody. All we have is the mom with 2 kids. We see incredible stigma. We see the 2 kids going out and they're collecting pop bottles and tin cans around the neighborhood to cash in to get food. And my heart breaks for them because all the other families can see them collecting the bottles. And the thought of those kids, how they might feel at school, how they might feel stigmatized. In addition, we see at one point in the school they do have a charity meals plan. The principal announces, those of you who are part of the food plan, please line up. And this little girl gets up and leaves the classroom to go get her charity food, a little bag of charity food. And oh, how stigmatizing. What the hell? As this family continues, the mom and the 2 kids, they lose their home, and there's a heartbreaking scene. They also have to give away their dog back to the SPCA. The 2 kids, they've loved this dog. It is so crushing when they have to give up the dog because they can't afford to care for the dog anymore, can't feed the dog, and they're now going to have to go live in a hotel room. 1 hotel room for mom and the 2 kids and the other dog. They do keep 1 dog. And then they keep moving from single room to single room like that. Meanwhile, the whole time the mom's been trying to go to school to be a hairdresser. So mom is going to school to be a hairdresser. She's leaving her kids alone all day in a hotel room, in a trucker's place. You know those motel, strip hotel mall things?
Yeah, like truck stops.
Truck stops. And so there's truckers. We see it all the time. And this little girl, who at this point is about 12, beautiful little blonde girl, we can totally see where her future is going to go. You can imagine she's hungry, she's lonely, she's unsupervised. We can predict some trucker's going to say, hey, sweetheart, let me buy you a nice lunch. Let me buy you some nice clothes. Let's go to the mall and we'll get some presents for your mom.
Yeah, that or even just offering a way out. Like they're truckers, they leave.
Right, she'll say, oh, you know, this guy says he loves me, and he says if I come live with him, he'll take good care of me. And maybe he does, maybe he doesn't, right? So this show here, Poor Kids, although it's a very specific set of stories, every single one of them is a standard story. In the sense, it's iconic, it's a formulaic story or a template. It's the kind of story your clients, if you're a social worker with victims of abuse, working in a homeless shelter, working with the prison system, working with women's shelters or youth shelters, or any of those kind of places where we social workers spend 40 hours a week, you will see these kind of stories. Don't be judgmental on them. That little girl didn't choose to have a mom who had no money, who had nothing material to offer her. They took turns. The mom and the girl would sleep on the bed and the boy would sleep on the floor, and I kind of inferred that sometimes they take turns. And if you've ever been in those kind of dumpy hotel rooms, they often have bed bugs or scabies, or now they would have C19 somewhere in this story.
Some mysterious stain in the corner.
Yes, exactly. Or vulnerable to violence, every kind of bad thing that might happen, these three families are completely positioned to have bad things happen. All of the parents in these stories are trying to be good parents. They just don't have the material protection. These three families are not the Queen of England. The Queen of England does not have to worry about her kids sleeping on the floor in a hotel room with his bed bugs or disease or no supervision. We see scenes with obviously this third girl totally breaks my heart. Totally breaks. I think about her all the time, and I've watched this video 20 times. We see scenes where she's outside. We see she loves to dance. And so she's outside by herself dancing in different kind of scenes. Or she's walking at one point on a railway track, and she has on flip-flops or she's barefoot. And as someone, I have a scar on my foot about that long, and I stepped on a broken pop bottle when I was a kid. I never got stitches. I never went to the doctor. It got infected. It's still a scar this big. And I think, oh, even that kind of level of thing that, you know, even if we say, oh, maybe there'll be no predator, there'll be no rapist, there'll be no nasty trucker, there'll be no addiction, you know, none of this. Just the basic risk that some of these kids are vulnerable to being completely unsupervised all the time, wandering around barefoot with railroad tracks and broken glass and parking lots. And
I mean, even if you are watching over them, there's still accidents.
Right, that's what I mean. That they could eat some bad food, have food poisoning. There's so many things that could happen to two young kids having no supervision because mom is going to school.
Yeah.
She's trying to build a good life, but she has no money for a babysitter. And she's just trusting the kids, latchkey kids. Maybe 100 years ago that was kind of a norm, but now it's not. And we certainly know it's not for the Queen of England. Queen of England will never have to worry about accidentally stepping on a broken piece of glass in her bare feet and then having no access to stitches or medical care or antibiotics. Mm-hmm. She's gonna get it. She's gonna get the best, right? Mm-hmm. And there's probably 10 nannies all the time. You know, put on your slippers, sweetheart. Put on your running shoes, sweetheart. And even when she's riding on a horse or something, right? She's got people watching her at all times. So I wanted to talk about poverty, and then I wanted to remind you all of these things. Poverty, when we're working with elders and reflecting on elders who've had poverty all their life. Mm-hmm. And all the different concepts. They may have a knee injury that never heals. They may have struggled with addiction. They may have not had a chance to get a good education or ever save money or ever get ahead. They might have so many times had a broken heart that they turn to alcohol. Very reasonable choice given how their life has unfolded. So all of these poverties of knowledge, hope, time, support, access to medical care, supervision, safety, and safety in all the ways. Safety of no broken bottle cut, and safety of be away from Igor. And then the self-esteem. So all of that, again, when we think of intersectionality, and we think of racism, when we think of disabilities, when we think of grief and loss and shame, and then think of rural and northern communities in isolation. So the previous videos we've built here together, all of those tangle with poverty. Poverty tangles with all that. It's not a separate thing. I think we began the first session, we said something like, many times as a student you think, oh, I have 12 weeks to write a 10-page essay on poverty, and then I'll get an A on my essay on poverty. Well, in real life, poverty's there all the time. It's not the kind of thing where it's only for 12 weeks and it's a separate aspect of who you are. Poverty is with you as female, as rural, as alone in the world. All of those things. It's not
compartmentalized.
Right, it's not compartmentalized. It's not a chapter. It's
the whole book.
It's tangled. It's always there. And even much later in life, I've told a story of like, I now have a good income and I have good things around me, but I still hold my breath when I put my Visa card or my bank card in. I just go, right? So high blood pressure issues, issues of kidney failure, issues of osteoporosis,
Anxiety,
adrenal failure, all of these things. The life story of people who've had poverty. The Queen of England, if she needs glasses when she's 5 or 10 or 15, she gets glasses.
And if she needs new glasses because her prescription changed, she'll probably get that new pair.
Probably the same day it even crosses her mind. But with poor kids, we know that the last pair of glasses I bought, and I don't think they were they're actually, they look like exactly like this. These are reader glasses from Walmart kind of places. But I also have proper prescription glasses, but they're not designer with like I don't know, Kardashian crystals on the side or anything. They look exactly like this, but they're black, and they were $1,100.
Mm-hmm.
$1,100 with the bifocal at the bottom. $1,100. How would a mom, one of these moms here, get a pair of glasses for herself and or for her kids at that amount of money?
Yeah.
She'd
have to pick one kid. Maybe.
Or say to the kid, we'll go and get, like, this is the closest we'll get, the $10
Squint real hard.
Or squint real hard. So if you're not succeeding at school because you have a hearing disability or a visual disability or any other kind of thing, you're not going to get the support. Queen of England, boom, she's got it, right? So your clients reflect on all of that. Those things like glasses for elders in particular, right? Their prescriptions, their medications, their supports, their nutrition, the insure 3 times a day, warm socks in the winter, good boots in the winter. A lot of this stuff, your clients have had a chronic deficit, chronic absence of resources and supports.
Mm-hmm. And as they get older, it's probably going to manifest physically a lot more. And they become more dependent.
Yeah. So don't go put judgments on them. Be respectful, kind, tender, and have them teach you where they've had these specific, unique, each person's story is unique, and honor them and teach them that they deserved better. Say that all the time. I believe you deserve better. I'm really sorry that happened. So today, this is where we're at. What can I do to help with that? Don't judge them. I've had so many times in my career, someone in the world is saying, well, if only you had budgeted better. This is my hate look. Can you see my hate look? If somebody's making minimum wage, like this hairdresser lady, the mom here, if she's making minimum wage at some kind of job while trying to go to school to build a better life, the fathers of the children are absent and not supporting the family here. We also can see that there isn't subsidized housing, which she deserved. There isn't, through the school system, a non-stigmatized free meals for everybody at lunchtime. All the things that we as social workers with structural social work analysis, a feminist structural social work analysis, working with social work with victims of abuse, if those supports were in place, which we could do, which we can do, which we sometimes do in the Western world, if all of that was in place, they would be less likely to be social work victims of abuse. They would be less likely to be vulnerable to a pimp or a predatory landlord or a Catholic priest or the guy down the street or Igor the truck driver. So this is some of the stuff I want you to reflect on about poverty and social work with victims of abuse. Thank you for watching this video again and for signing up for the course. Thank you again, Steven Spielberg.
No problem.